football right there. Look at that. The Orioles home for 11 games and within a breath of first place after a magnificent effort on Wednesday night by Kevin Gausman at Fenway Park. Luke Jones here to talk not just all things Orioles, but also the Ravens in preparation for the Cleveland Browns. We got a lot of things to hit on here in the big city as the weekend approaches. But, Luke, you're going to be eating a lot of hot dogs at the ballpark now, aren't you?
I am. Last big homestand of the year, 11 games, and lo and behold, the Orioles, after that road trip that we talked about, how this could, maybe not spell the end, but certainly spell the end of their division hopes if they played like they had largely over the course of the season on the road. They go 6-3. They take 2 out of 3 from both Detroit and Boston. They win another series at Fenway Park, and we were treated to October baseball on Wednesday night. That was, if you're a baseball fan, if you're someone who loves watching high-stakes October playoff caliber baseball, we got treated to that in mid-September. That was terrific. A 1-0 final. Rick Porcello hadn't been beaten at Fenway Park all year long. He pitched extremely well. Kevin Gausman was better. And
I don't know about odds in Vegas, right? But one was 13-0 at home. One was 1-9 on the road. I don't know how Vegas would have factored that in. You could have made a lot of money on the Orioles on Wednesday night.
You probably could have. I mean, it wasn't quite Ubaldo Jimenez going up against Max Scherzer.
Guy who's 20-3 at home and 13-0. No one bets against him, right?
I mean, you wouldn't think so. Now, I'll say this. I mean, Rick Porcello had been the benefactor of a ton of run support at home. I mean, his ERA at home was right around 3, which, don't get me wrong, is really good, but that's not unbeatable. That's not Pedro Martinez in the late 90s. And the Orioles only got the 1 run. He threw a hanging slider to Mark Trumbo, who crushed it over the Green Monster in the second inning, and that held up. Just a phenomenal performance. There's plenty of credit to go around. The infield defense was good. Zach Britton came in and slammed the door in the 9th inning. But the story of the night, it wasn't even close, was Kevin Gausman, who has pretty much pitched a lot like a number 1 starter since late July. Go back to that horrendous start he had at Rogers Center. Gave up 3 home runs in the first inning on a Friday night. Got clobbered, only lasted 3 innings.
Yeah, we were real worried about him after that one, I think,
Absolutely.
Right?
I even found the tweet after that game. He said, "Better days ahead, back at it tomorrow, and I promise I'll be better. Stick with us, Birdland." Since then, in 9 starts covering 56 2/3 innings, he's pitched to a 2.06 ERA.
That is Pedro Martinez kind of number now.
And think about the Orioles at a time of need. They haven't had Chris Tillman for the better part of a month with the shoulder issue. There's so many other members of their rotation pitching below their past performance.
And O'Day's not there if you bow out in the 6th inning to think, well, the 8th is okay, right?
And as I wrote at WNST.net, talking about this whole idea of when does a talented young pitcher become an ace? It rarely happens overnight. There's patience involved. There's some bumps in the road along the way. But for me, I'm not saying Kevin Gausman is an ace now because he's got to continue to pitch like this in big moments and to put up numbers that are worthy of being called an ace. But the 8th inning sure felt like an ace out there. As I noted on Twitter before the 8th inning started, Gausman was at 104 pitches, 1-0, facing the best offense in baseball on the road, Fenway Park, hitter's haven. There were more than a few fans on Twitter questioning whether you go back to him. To me, it wasn't even a debate. I didn't want anyone else pitching in that game other than Zach Britton. And quite frankly, if Gausman's pitch count had been more reasonable and not at 120 after 8, where you don't want to put him in danger, that there would have been some debate whether you send Gausman back out there for the 9th inning. He was that good on Wednesday night. And just to give you a little idea, if you didn't happen to catch Wednesday night's game, his 120th and final pitch of the night, 98.5 miles per hour, the second hardest pitch of the night that he threw. The hardest pitch of the night that he threw, 98.8, which was 3 pitches earlier. So this guy waited for the final 4 pitches, 2 of the final 4 pitches of the night to throw his absolute hardest against the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park in a 1-0 game where you were trying to get to 1 game out. trying to keep your division hopes.
The biggest game of the year. Let's call it what it is, right?
Oh, it was, absolutely. Until we get to this next homestand, and then when Boston comes in next week, those will be the biggest games
we'll lose
of the year.
3 out of 4 to Tampa this weekend, and, they'll all be big, too. So, I mean, they're all huge. And I tweeted out right when the game began, I'm hearing, must win and all that stuff. Look, the Red Sox could still stumble and fall. I mean, look at what's going on with Toronto right now.
Sure.
Like, this whole thing is, like a relationship. Call me next week. I'll tell you how we're getting along. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of where the pennant race is. But the strange part of this pennant race is unlike any other pennant race that I can remember, and there aren't a whole lot I can remember because they were 3 lifetimes ago for me, for most races, I mean, I remember the 79 race with the Red Sox. I mean, I remember all the Blue Jays races, which we didn't win most of those. I remember all the Yankees races in the late 70s, and we didn't win most of those. But this thing where there are 6 or 7 teams you need to be keeping an eye on every night, that makes this thing even more fascinating because as much as you think you're competing with the Red Sox and the Blue Jays, you got to watch the Tigers, and you better keep an eye on Houston and Seattle because when they win 4 or 5 in a row, you look up and you're like, oh, yeah, bad weekend, and here come the Astros or whomever it is because that's this. I mean, there are a lot of horses in this race. Somebody's going to run fast. Right now, it's the Orioles, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, it has been. That's why I'll be the first to admit when they added the second wild card and they brought this notion of the 1-game wild card, I was really against it just because you have a 162-game season and you're going to before if you had won the wild card you were guaranteed a spot in the division series. We had talked about is that really that much worse than winning the division? We'd seen cases where we were wondering if teams, quite frankly, were valuing winning the division when they were going up against a second-place team in their own division that was the wild card. But having the second wild card has really made this time of year that much more exciting. I mean, look at the Orioles case. I mean, that's a team that's vying for the division. If you're one of the wild cards, that's great, but it's a 1-game playoff, and you almost have a feeling if you don't win that 1-game playoff, and ask the Pittsburgh Pirates the last couple years, you feel like you didn't really make the playoffs. But it's created such great theater. It's created that much more value to winning your division. And as you alluded to, I mean, you have this great AL East race where even the Yankees are hanging around 4 games out of first place at this point. But you have this deeper race that you have to take a look at what Detroit's done. And Seattle's won 8 games in a row now, and the Houston Astros, if not for the fact that they can't beat the Texas Rangers to save their life, they would be right there, and they would probably be leading this thing if it wasn't for the fact that they can't beat the Rangers if their life depended on it. But it's just created this outstanding race that has multiple layers to it, and for the Orioles to do what they did over the final 6 games of this road trip, we know how poorly they'd played on the road all year, and to go 6-3, and the one of the top teams that you're competing against for the wild card, you take 2 out of 3 from them, and then to do this against Boston, who and I've been guilty of this as much as anyone. How many times have we been ready to just say the Red Sox are the best team in this division, hands down, crown them, and the Orioles go in there and take care of business. It was just really, really fun to watch, and you have to be impressed with the statement made. Now, as you pointed out, you got to come home and continue and pick up right where you left off on the road. But I think for me, Wednesday night's game wasn't a must-win. Certainly not a must-win in terms of their wild card and just general playoff hopes. But in terms of the division, I thought that was a huge swing game. To be able to come home now 1 game out as opposed to 3 games out, it puts you in a position that, assuming, and this is a big assumption because Tampa Bay has given teams like Toronto a lot of trouble here recently, but if you take care of business against them over the weekend, it puts you in a position for a 4-game set with Boston where you're not forced to have to pull a 1982 against the Brewers and win 4 straight or anything like that.
Yeah, where's Jim Palmer when you need him?
Yeah.
He wasn't even around on Wednesday night. I feel bad that, Gausman pitched like that and Palmer wasn't there to witness it.
It's funny you mention that. A couple people said that to me on Twitter. It was just that good of a performance. His fastball command was outstanding. How many times have we talked about, even games where Gausman has pitched well this year, we've talked about him not throwing first pitch strikes. threw first pitch strikes to 21 of the 29 batters he faced. Fastball
Which has always been the problem for any Oriole pitcher in the history of Jake Arrieta and Ubaldo Jimenez and Sidney Pond. Anybody that struggles, that's the problem. Ball one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, ball one is a massive problem for starting pitchers.
It is. He threw an effective split changeup, as he typically does when he plays well. But the other thing that hasn't been talked about quite as much, his breaking ball's gotten better. He threw a. It's not his best pitch, but he threw it effectively. He mixed it in when he needed to on Wednesday night. And, early in that game, Boston squared up a few balls here and there. Some hit right at defenders. Some, Manny Machado made a terrific play right after Wieters had made the error on the pop-up, and what was a crazy wind at Fenway Park.
Well, the Adam Jones thing is incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what he had to say after the game, but, I mean, he had at least one home run taken away, but probably two. I mean, on a regular sort of 88-degree Boston night, those are home runs. But it probably benefited Gausman at some point, too, during the game.
It might have, but again, at the same time, as the game went on, he got better, and Boston didn't really hit too many balls hard. I mean, they were barely. It was a lot of weak contact, especially later in the game.
Well, the Leon strikeout at the end, that was, I know it's the bottom of the order and whatever, but that was a big spot. That was huge, and he was filthy. I mean, he looks like he's pitching now. He has an idea what he's doing. He's setting guys up, and to your point, he has command, and he can put the ball where he wants to put it, which I don't know that was the case, and I don't know that he really look like a confident individual in that bullpen role.
I think the confidence for me is, and clearly he's commanded. It's easier to be confident when you're commanding your pitches. I mean, that's stating the obvious, but I think he's been more aggressive. I've seen, and who knows? Some people have joked, is it the goatee? Maybe it's a fear the beard, it's fear the goatee in the case of Kevin Gausman. But I wonder if there's some correlation here as far as Dylan Bundy entering this rotation and having the success that he had to a dramatic degree for a while there. I mean, remember, Bundy had that 4 or 5 start stretch where, he was looking like a number one starter. He was looking like an ace. He was, taking no-hitters into the 5th or 6th inning and just being lights out. You wonder if, not that anyone else wanted it to be that way, but maybe Kevin Gausman treated that as a little bit of a message, not that his spot in the rotation was in danger, but maybe his spot, his status as the anointed future top of the rotation guy came into question a little bit there. And some competition like that can be healthy. I mean, I guarantee you the New York Mets, their young starters before some of the injuries they've dealt with had to absolutely thrive with this competition between Jacob deGrom and Syndergaard and Hunt and Matt Harvey. I mean, just these guys trying to one up each other, trying to do better than the guy did the night before. And I wonder if there was a little bit of that for Gausman because, like I said, since that late July start in Toronto, where for my money that might have been the worst start of his career, he was that bad. He's been terrific since then, and you look at how it correlates with Tillman's injury and with the Orioles needing some good starting pitching to try to stay in this race after struggling for a good portion of the second half. It's just been really impressive to see. Now, he's got to continue it, and success can be fleeting, momentum can be fleeting in this game. We see that all the time, but it's been really, really fun to watch. And as you mentioned, that 7th inning, think about it. Hanley Ramirez reached on an infield single that wasn't hit hard, a ball to the hole that Hardy just couldn't get enough on his throw to throw him out in time. And the Young single was an absolute bloop that barely got over the infield. So, it was
Hardy almost got to that.
Yeah, right. It was first and third. Wasn't a case where he was struggling. It was just they put 2 guys on base. It was the baseball gods there. A couple balls put in play that weren't hit hard, but were put in good spots. And he gets Leon striking out, swinging. Was just filthy. Was fun to watch, and I mean there aren't enough adjectives to describe how huge that was. And I was thinking about it after the game. There have been Orioles that have pitched great games over the course of the last 50, let's say since Mike Messina was here.
Sure.
There have been some great performances. There's no doubt about that. Jason Hamill had a one-hit shutout several years back. Daniel Cabrera had a one-hit shutout at Yankee Stadium years ago.
we forget those days. I don't think anybody was watching the games.
Right.
Then,
well,
but yes.
and that's getting to my point. I'm trying to think, other than Bud Norris against Detroit in the division series, and he didn't pitch as deep into that game as Gausman did on Wednesday night. I don't think there's been a better performance in a high-stakes game that the Orioles have been involved in. Maybe, like I said, other than Norris, maybe since Mike Messina has been around these parts, and you're talking a really long time ago. Again, the Orioles, what they do over the next 17 games will shape the narrative of just how important this one ultimately proved to be. But considering how significant this was, and the fact that the Orioles are in the race and they closed the gap to one game in the division, going home now for 11. It's hard to remember too many performances being this good when the stakes were this high, and just you tip your cap to Kevin Gausman, and you just hope it continues, because it's been really, really fun to watch here over the last 6 weeks, and especially over his last 4 or 5 starts.
Or as John Belushi once said, I ate a lot of donuts that day. He is Luke Jones, Baltimore Luke at on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. Gallardo and Snell, Jimenez and Archer. And by the way, Archer's going for his 19th loss this year. I am the idiot who picked Tampa to win the division. Tillman and Andres on Saturday, and Odorizzi, who is a much improving guy, and a guy I'd love to see in the Oriole rotation, and Dylan Bundy on Sunday as well. And then we come back with Boston next week. The matchups, again, Gausman and Porcello on Monday, so we'll see that one again. We'll be at Buffalo Wild Wings in Owings Mills for that one. Gallardo and Rodriguez on Tuesday. Jimenez and Buchholz allegedly on Wednesday at this point, and I guess that would put Gallardo. Would put Gallardo back on the mound. No, after Jimenez, Tillman. So Tillman would go Thursday. I'm only asking about Thursday because my wife wants to see Big Poppy's last game in Baltimore. So we are going to the game next Thursday. I have been instructed that that's going to happen, and of course that's the last game of the regular season as well.
Yeah, it is. And one thing I just want to interject there, the estimate right now is Bundy on Sunday, but we don't know that yet.
Sure.
That's not official. Officially, the Orioles TBD for Sunday. I think, there's an argument that, and clearly that would be Wade Miley's spot if he's going to pitch. The only argument here is...
Come on, we're in a pennant race. Don't talk like that.
But at the same time, do you want to have Bundy potentially starting against Boston as opposed to Tampa? Well, we'll see. I think a lot of it...
Give the Vanimal the ball. That's what I say. Spot start. Let's go.
And you know what? I would be all for that over Wade Miley. But there's just, there's some moving parts there. And keep in mind, and this is a very relevant point here, Kevin Gausman did throw 120 pitches on Wednesday night. Is there a thought process? And I'm not even saying Wade Miley is the guy to stick in there. Maybe you decide you're going to do a bullpen game because you have expanded rosters.
And then push Bundy to Monday, push everybody a day.
Process to give both Bundy and Gausman an extra day. And I think that's a very relevant, fair point.
Well, if the Orioles win Thursday and Friday and the Red Sox lose one and you're tied for first place, you have a little bit more leeway to say, it's a Sunday against Tampa, we'll let the bullpen come in. Maybe the bullpen's rested because Jimenez and Tillman can get to the 7th. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts here. You know what, though? Here's what I'm going to say, and I don't give Buck the superlative so much because, quite frankly, he's been a jerk to me. But I'll say this. We have a genius running the thing. He'll figure it out, right? I mean, literally, right? Like, he'll probably do the right thing in this case, right?
Well, it comes down to this. We've guys like you and me, and even fans, even the most loyal Orioles fans that are living and dying with every game and ready to call the season over after every loss. They have said all year that this team, there's no way they would be able to contend and sustain this with the starting rotation that they have. On top of that, they've lost Darren O'Day for most of the season. He hasn't pitched since late May consistently. And so that's put a strain on their bullpen. They've had offensive woes in the second half of the season, yet the Orioles come home for an 11-game homestand in mid-September, 1 game out of first place, and currently holding the first wild card. I think Buck Showalter knows what he's doing, even if that means he's not perfect.
Well, and the other part of that is it's all sitting there in front of them. They will win the division if they play well. They will be a wild card if they play pretty well. They'll be the home wild card if they play even better than that. And if they stink, over the next 2 weeks, they'll be home. And that's the way it should be, quite frankly.
I was just going to say, that's exactly.
And if they stink the first week in October in 5 games, they'll go home then too. I mean, that's the way this works.
And what more can you ask for? That's where it stands. I mean, this team doesn't have to play unbelievable baseball to win the division. They need to play really good baseball to win the division at this point. And that's assuming that Boston doesn't go 16-1 over their final 17 or anything crazy like that. But it's sitting right there for them. They just have to go out and take care of business. And when you're playing 11 of those final 17 at home, knowing how this team has played at Camden Yards over the duration of the season, got to like their chances, even understanding that final week still looms with a trip to New York and to Toronto.
All right, Luke and I spent the morning and the afternoon out in Owings Mills on Wednesday. The Purple football team's playing this weekend too, although it does feel a little bit like an exhibition game, especially when I call out to Cleveland and talk to the folks out there about how they're feeling about their Brownies right now. But it's all Indians there, and of course they have the Tigers all weekend. And the Ravens are getting ready for business. Still some mystery, right? Some mystery around Doomerville, and certainly the locker of Brashad Perryman, as we have seen all too much over a year and a half, a little silent right now.
Yeah, Brashad Perriman dealing with the calf issue. I know Adam Schefter of ESPN reported on Wednesday that it was a minor issue. He used the term minor, not me. We'll see. We've seen over the last few years, calf issues can keep guys out for a while. Chris Canty, if you remember, had a calf issue. Crockett Gilmore missed some time with that earlier last season. So we'll see. I don't know if a minor calf issue means he's good to go Sunday or if it's going to be a week or two. The good news is, we assume it's not anything catastrophic, but this is just going to create more and more questions about his ability to stay on the field. Elvis Doomerville did not practice Wednesday, so I'm guessing, considering how much time he's missed, that probably unlikely that he goes. So you're right about this having a little bit of a preseason feel to it from Cleveland standpoint. Talking to Hugh Jackson on the conference call on Wednesday, he has high expectations for that team, but you look at that roster, a third of them are rookies.
I'm like, who the hell are these guys? It's like Major League, man.
I believe, a legitimate 17 rookies on that roster right now. You have 53 players on the roster. That's just under a third of their players are rookies right now. They have a few talented players here and there, but not nearly enough. And for the Ravens, regardless of the fact that they're dealing with some injuries right now, Zadarius Smith didn't practice. He's dealing with an ankle issue that I assume is the same one he dealt with over the summer that cost him the last couple preseason games. C.J. Mosley said he'll be fine, but he missed Wednesday's practice as well. So they're dealing with a few guys that are sidelined right now. But you just look at their roster. Even with the questions about the Ravens roster, even considering that they have some older players they're depending on and some unproven young players that need to step forward, you look at it compared to that Cleveland roster, and you never want to assume a road win. It's difficult to win in the National Football League.
Yeah, the Steelers came here last year against Ryan Mallett and just assumed a road win, and that wasn't much different than this matchup.
Absolutely, but this is a game that, and I said this to you right off the bat, as soon as we put Buffalo in the rearview mirror in terms of the discussion.
Trap game.
If you're going to be a playoff team, if you're going to be a legitimate playoff contender and want to make noise in the AFC, you don't lose road games to Cleveland because other road games are going to be difficult.
Right, if you're going to go 4-4 on the road, which should sort of kind of be your this has to be one of the 4 you win, not lose.
Even if you're going to go the gambit of trying to run the table at home and 8-0 at home and 2-6 on the road would get you to 10-6. This needs to be one of the two. There's no questions asked.
Well, Jacksonville used to be, we'll talk about that next week, but
Sure.
they got to go play in New England. They got to go play in Pittsburgh. They got to go play in Cincinnati. They got to go play in New York twice. They got to go play in Dallas. So, when you start to look at those games and you say, okay, maybe Dallas because of the quarterback or whatever, but the rest of them traditionally, they're an underdog, and probably, no matter their record, they'll be an underdog in Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, no matter how well they play.
Yeah, so you got to take care of business, and I'll say this. I think it's absolutely valid. I still believe the Ravens would have rather faced Robert Griffin III than Josh McCown, but at the same time, you can't have Josh McCown play like he's John Unitas again, like he did last year when he threw for 450 yards in Baltimore and nearly beat them a second time. But remember, got hurt in that one. But this is a game the Ravens need to win. There's no doubt about that. And I think based on what we saw in Week 1, still plenty of room to grow. Still a work in progress on the offensive side of the ball. Still questions that you did it against Tyrod Taylor and a Bills offense that beyond Sammy Watkins didn't have a ton in terms of receiving talent. Let's see you take it on the road and play like that against another team that, quite frankly, just shouldn't have the horses to hang with even the Ravens, even with the questions about how good the Ravens really are. This is a Cleveland team that on paper is severely inferior, and the Ravens need to play that way.
I just wrote on our Facebook Live, this is going to be a hell of a couple of weeks of sports here, right? I mean, with the Ravens every week and then 6 interesting days for sure till the end. I mean, the Orioles might not make the playoffs. It will be really disappointing at this point if they don't, because it would mean they really have played poorly. But we're going to be watching every night. I mean, this is 15 great days of sports coming up here.
It is. And like I said, just to reiterate one more time, Wednesday night, I mean, that was, if you're a pure, kind of old school baseball fan, it doesn't get any better than that. That was terrific theater. That was October baseball we were treated to in mid-September, where you're hanging with every pitch, you're nervous until you retire the side and get back into your own dugout, and the Orioles come to the plate, you exhale a little bit more. That's how you feel in the playoffs, and that's what we were treated to. And you hope we get at least a couple more of those as far as that quality of play between now and the end of the season, and then treated to some October baseball for real after that. That would certainly be a heck of a lot of fun to go with all the excitement around town right now.
And we got the kids in bed before 10 o'clock, which is even better, so that's good. He is Luke at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. I am Nasty at WNST.net, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, as well as streaming live on Facebook Live and our WNSTV YouTube channel. Anything you miss here, you can find in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear anywhere you are. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. I have part 2 of my Oriole attendance woes blog coming out. Now that they're winning, I guess more people will come to the ballpark. I mean, that is a box of chocolates over the next 11 days. We're going to find out. You can also, at any point, get the breaking news when it happens, as it happens, on the WNST Tech Service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis will be here this Thursday, next Thursday, every Thursday, doing some sports radio from 3 until 5, the SSV on WNST. Last but never least, Eric Weddle will be joining us on Tuesday at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry and raising some dough for them, as well as getting to know Eric Weddle, who I have been told by everyone is such a sensational guy from San Diego. We documented that all spring and all summer. And, of course, when I went to him to come out to do a swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry, he's our first guest of the year. We're very, very excited about having Eric Weddle out on Tuesday. So we'll see you up in Harford County. That's at Adams Jeep. Show starts at 7:30. That is Tuesday night in Aberdeen, and I think Eric was excited that that's Cal Ripken's hometown. So you played baseball in high school. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. Please go and check that out. We got a great weekend of sports programming here. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.